Nuclear war isn't just a headline. It's the nightmare that's haunted generations. And when Hollywood tackled it, the results weren't glossy blockbusters. They were gut punches, the kind of movies that left you staring at the ceiling, wondering how close we really were to the edge. Some scared governments, some fooled the public, and some made presidents lose sleep. So, buckle in, because we're about to relive the films that turned Cold War dread into cinematic terror. The day after 1983. In 1983, ABC aired a TV movie that shook the entire nation. The Day After didn't just tell a story, it forced millions of Americans to confront the unthinkable. Set in Lawrence, Kansas, the film followed ordinary families, farmers, doctors, and students, as their lives were ripped apart when nuclear missiles actually hit U.S. soil. No Hollywood spectacle here. Just quiet, devastating images of families disintegrating, hospitals overrun, and a Midwest town slipping into nuclear winter. What made it even more chilling was how real it all felt. There were no aliens, no futuristic gadgets, just the sobering possibility that this could actually happen tomorrow. When it aired, more than 100 million people tuned in. Ronald Reagan himself admitted in his diary that it depressed him deeply. Pentagon officials hated the script because it showed nuclear war starting by accident, not through Soviet aggression. But director Nicholas Meyer refused to bow to pressure. The cultural impact was enormous. Schools, churches, and government offices held discussion groups the very next day because people were shaken to their core. This wasn't entertainment. This was a national trauma broadcast in prime time. The Day After wasn't just a movie. It was a mirror America didn't want to look into. Fail Safe, 1964. Long before computer glitches became everyday fears, Failsafe imagined the unthinkable. What if a simple malfunction ordered American bombers to nuke Moscow? Henry Fonda plays the U.S. president scrambling to stop it, and Walter Matthau delivers a cold-blooded performance as a strategist convinced war is inevitable. Shot in stark black and white, the film has the atmosphere of a documentary. There are no sweeping action scenes, no dramatic mushroom clouds, just phones ringing, faces sweating, and unbearable silence as men try and fail to claw back control from their own machines. And that's what made it terrifying. The film's climax still ranks as one of the most gut-wrenching in Cold War cinema, the U.S. president making an impossible sacrifice to prove to Moscow that the strike was a mistake. Critics praised its precision and intensity. Unlike Kubrick's satirical Dr. Strangelove, released the same year, Failsafe didn't cushion its terror with humor. It went straight for the throat. Decades later, it still resonates. Because it isn't about war, it's about how fragile the systems we trust can be. Failsafe made audiences realize that it might. Not take malice to end the world, just a malfunction, a misread signal, and a chain reaction no one can stop. Testament, 1983. If The Day After showed the spectacle, Testament showed the heartbreak. This haunting drama focuses on a small California family after a nuclear war, not during the explosions, but in the slow-motion collapse that follows. You never even see the bombs. The terror comes from the silence. Jane Alexander gives a career-defining performance as a mother trying to hold her children together while the world outside falls apart. Neighbors vanish, food dwindles, the air itself becomes poison. The family clings to dignity, holding birthday parties, reciting poems, even as sickness creeps into their home. What makes Testament unforgettable is its restraint. No special effects, no mushroom clouds, just the unbearable truth that survival might mean watching everyone you love slowly slip away. Roger Ebert called it one of the most powerful films he had ever seen, admitting it made him cry twice. Paramount was so struck by its raw power that they released it theatrically, even though it was originally made for TV. For many, the film's quiet despair was more haunting than any big-budget apocalypse. Because it didn't look like a movie, it looked like life unraveling in slow, painful detail. If The Day After rattled the nation, Testament sank straight into the heart. Miracle Mile, 1988. It begins like a quirky love story. Boy meets girl, sparks fly, and then a payphone rings. A stranger on the other end screams that nuclear missiles are minutes away from obliterating Los Angeles, and suddenly, Miracle Mile plunges you into one of the most panic-fueled countdowns ever put on the film. Anthony Edwards stars as Harry, a man who stumbles into this nightmare by accident. The brilliance of the film is in its pacing. Shot in near real time, you watch chaos ripple across the city as rumors spread. One phone call becomes riots, looting, desperate lovers, and the terrifying unraveling of an entire metropolis. The tension is unbearable. Is it real? Is it a hoax? You don't know until the very last moments, and by then, you've been dragged through a roller coaster of dread. Director Steve DeJarnat famously refused to change the ending, even when studios begged for a happier resolution. And thank goodness he didn't, because the bleak finale is what cements Miracle Mile as one of the darkest love stories ever made. It's not just a nuclear war film. It's a reminder of how thin the line is between normal life and chaos. One wrong call, one rumor, and civilization collapses before your eyes. That's why Miracle Mile still haunts anyone who sees it. Special Bulletin, 1983. 9 months before The Day After shook the nation, NBC pulled a stunt that made viewers in Charleston, South Carolina, panic. Special Bulletin was a fake news broadcast about terrorists holding the city hostage with a homemade nuclear device, styled like a live television report. It felt so real that some viewers believed it was actually happening. The film followed reporters covering what seemed like a labor dispute, only for it to spiral into a nuclear crisis. The terrorists demanded detonators, or they would unleash destruction. What followed was chaos, fear, and an ending that pulled no punches. Despite multiple disclaimers flashing the word dramatization, phone lines across the South lit up with terrified callers. Families huddled together, thinking they were witnessing the start of nuclear war in real time. Critics later praised it as a brilliant mix of realism and fear-mongering. It won Emmys, but it also raised big questions about media responsibility. What makes Special Bulletin fascinating is that it's not about governments or generals. It's about how fragile trust is when the media delivers horror straight into your living room. It blurred the line between fiction and reality, and proved that sometimes the scariest weapon is a broadcast signal. On the Beach, 1959. It was 1959, and Hollywood wasn't ready for this kind of bleakness. On the Beach didn't show mushroom clouds or raging battles. It showed the aftermath. The war was already over. The Northern Hemisphere was gone. Radiation was drifting south. And in Australia, humanity waited for the end, like people waiting for a storm they couldn't outrun. Gregory Peck plays a stoic submarine captain. Ava Gardner gives one of her most haunting performances. And Fred Astaire, yes, Fred Astaire, shows up not to dance, but to deliver pure despair. The characters cling to normal routines. They drive cars, drink, fall in love. But every conversation drips with the awareness that it's all temporary. The radiation is coming, and nothing will stop it. What made On the Beach so disturbing wasn't spectacle, but inevitability. There's no Hollywood escape, no secret weapon, no heroics. Just a creeping, suffocating doom. At the time, some audiences called it un-American because it didn't offer hope, but others praised its brutal honesty. Dwight D. Eisenhower reportedly hated it, while audiences around the world couldn't stop talking about it. This wasn't entertainment. It was a funeral dirge for humanity, and it still hits hard today, precisely because it refuses to play nice. On the Beach left viewers shaken by asking a single, terrifying question. If the end was inevitable, how would you spend your final days? By Dawn's Early Light, 1990. Forget big studio theatrics. HBO of all places delivered one of the most chilling nuclear thrillers ever made. By Dawn's Early Light throws you into the chaos of a nuclear standoff caused by a rogue Soviet faction. It's the late Cold War. Paranoia is sky high, and suddenly the chain of command in Washington fractures right when the world can't afford indecision. The film stars James Earl Jones, Powers Booth, and Rebecca De Mornay in a tight, terrifying story where split-second decisions mean life or extinction. Unlike theatrical releases, this TV movie thrives on claustrophobic tension. Command centers buzz with arguments. Fighter pilots sit in cockpits waiting for orders that could annihilate millions. And at the top, the President Martin Landau wrestles with the impossible: retaliate and doom humanity, or hold back and risk looking weak. What makes it unforgettable is its credibility. There are no outlandish villains or sci-fi gadgets, just humans stumbling through a nightmare of their own making. Critics praised it for showing how fragile nuclear peace really was, even at the supposed end of the Cold War. For many viewers, By Dawn's early light was the last truly great Cold War nuclear film, a final warning before the Soviet Union collapsed. And it worked because it was all too believable. Panic in Year Zero, 1962. Before post-apocalyptic road trips became a genre, there was Panic in Year Zero. Directed by and starring Ray Milland, this low-budget gem cuts deeper than its B-movie trappings suggest. It starts with a family heading out on vacation, just as Los Angeles gets hit by nuclear bombs. With roads clogged, society collapsing, and danger everywhere, survival suddenly means moral compromises no one expected to face. What makes it chilling isn't the explosions, it's what people become afterward. Milland's character quickly realizes that kindness could get his family killed, so he turns ruthless, stockpiling supplies, brandishing guns, and doing whatever it takes to keep his wife and kids alive. Critics at the time dismissed it as exploitation, but in hindsight, it feels eerily prescient. Long before The Walking Dead showed neighbors turning on each other, Panic in Year Zero warned that civilization was only ever a thin veneer. Scratch it, and we all become predators. It's raw, it's cynical, and it doesn't apologize. For 1962 audiences, still adjusting to fallout drills and Kennedy-era nuclear tension, this was nightmare fuel. The lesson was clear. If the bombs don't get you, your fellow man just might. The Bedford Incident 1965. Tense, claustrophobic, relentless. The Bedford Incident takes place almost entirely aboard a U.S. destroyer, playing cat and mouse with a Soviet submarine during the height of the Cold War. Richard Widmark stars as the uncompromising captain, and Sidney Poitier plays the journalist, observing a crew wound tighter and tighter as paranoia consumes them. What starts as a routine encounter spirals into an accidental escalation that could ignite nuclear war, and that's the terror. No one wants the catastrophe, but pride, protocol, and pressure make it inevitable. The final moments are shocking, but they also feel horribly plausible. Audiences in 1965 walked out shaken, realizing that one misstep, one wrong word, one overreaction could end everything. Critics praised it as a companion piece to Fail Safe, but with a more psychological edge. The brilliance of the Bedford Incident lies in its restraint. There are no explosions until the very end. The suspense comes from silence, looks exchanged on deck, and the crushing weight of men realizing too late that they've pushed too far. It's a film that proved you don't need mushroom clouds to terrify, you just need a crew staring into the abyss and realizing they can't blink first. Trinity and Beyond. The Atomic Bomb Movie, 1995. Sometimes the scariest nuclear war film isn't fiction, it's real footage. Trinity and Beyond. The Atomic Bomb Movie, narrated by William Shatner, assembles decades of declassified test films into a jaw-dropping documentary. You see it all. The Trinity test, Bikini Atoll, monstrous hydrogen bombs that lit up the sky like artificial suns. The terror isn't hypothetical. These blasts actually happened. The film's restoration of 1950s and 1960s footage is stunning, but it's also horrifying. Giant fireballs consuming islands. Shockwaves flattening buildings miles away. Soldiers standing far too close to mushroom clouds as if human life was expendable. What makes it unforgettable is the juxtaposition. The footage is accompanied by triumphant, almost celebratory narration and music, exactly how governments presented these tests at the time. And yet, watching in the 1990s or today, the images feel apocalyptic. The sheer scale of destruction dwarfs anything Hollywood could dream up. Critics hailed it as both mesmerizing and terrifying. For younger audiences, it was a brutal history lesson. Nuclear war wasn't just a story. Humanity had already built and tested weapons capable of ending civilization. Trinity and Beyond is the rare nuclear movie that doesn't rely on plot or characters. Its horror lies in its evidence. It terrifies not because it could happen, but because it already did. Countdown to Looking Glass, 1984. If Special Bulletin blurred the line between fiction and reality, Countdown to Looking Glass shattered it. This Canadian-American TV movie, broadcast on HBO in 1984, played out like a series of real-time news reports chronicling a financial crisis spiraling into nuclear war. No explosions for most of the film, just anchors calmly reading headlines as the world collapses. The setup is eerily believable. A debt crisis in South America triggers a cascade of global instability, leading to military clashes between the United States and the Soviet Union. Viewers watched as experts debated on air, reporters scrambled for scoops, and government officials issued vague reassurances while panic simmered underneath. And then, almost casually, the unthinkable became inevitable. What made it terrifying wasn't spectacle, it was restraint. The film never showed the bombs falling, only the grim realization in the newsroom as they understood what was coming. That choice left viewers staring at their own TV screens, imagining what would happen if this wasn't fiction. Critics praised it for capturing the fragile role of media during a crisis. Audiences were unsettled because it felt less like a movie and more like a rehearsal for Armageddon. Countdown to Looking Glass asked a haunting question. When the world ends, will we learn about it from a news anchor struggling to keep his composure? Damnation Alley, 1977. Most nuclear war films go for somber realism. Damnation Alley said, "What if the apocalypse was a road trip?" Released in 1977, this cult oddity follows survivors driving across a radioactive wasteland in a giant armored vehicle called the Landmaster. On paper, it sounds like pure pulp, and in many ways, it is. But the film taps into something darker beneath the camp. The Earth has been thrown off its axis. Mutant creatures roam the landscape, sky-splitting storms and poison deserts turn every mile into a death trap. George Peppard and Jan Michael Vincent lead the ragtag survivors, clinging to hope as they cross a country that no longer resembles the America they knew. Audiences at the time didn't quite know what to make of it. Critics mocked the special effects, but for kids who caught it late at night, the imagery was unforgettable. Giant cockroaches devouring people alive, endless storms that made survival feel pointless, and the looming question of whether any pockets of civilization were left. Over the years, Damnation Alley has become a cult classic precisely because it's so strange. Beneath its B-movie sheen, it captures a fear few films dared to explore, that even if we survived nuclear war, what's left might not be worth the fight. The Atomic Cafe, 1982. Forget dramatizations. Sometimes the scariest thing is realizing how much we were lied to. The Atomic Cafe is a darkly comic documentary pieced together from government propaganda films, newsreels, and military training shorts from the 1940s and 1950s. It doesn't add narration. It doesn't need to. The footage speaks for itself. Viewers see schoolchildren ducking under desks as if wooden planks could shield them from fireballs. Soldiers cheerfully marching toward blast zones. Officials downplaying radiation as manageable. The government wanted Americans calm, obedient, and confident that nuclear weapons were safe, even as test sites vaporized islands and left entire communities poisoned. What makes the Atomic Cafe terrifying is the cheerful tone of the clips contrasted with the horror of what they actually depict. A jaunty voiceover tells soldiers to keep morale high while mushroom clouds bloom behind them. Cartoon mascots teach kids that fallout is no big deal. It's absurd. It's surreal, and it's horrifying because it really happened. The documentary became a cult hit, beloved by critics who praised its biting satire. But underneath the gallows, humor was a devastating point. The real terror wasn't just the bomb, it was how easily people were manipulated into treating it like just another tool of progress. The Atomic Cafe doesn't show the end of the world. It shows how we got dangerously close with a smile on our faces. Ladybug Ladybug, 1963. Before the TV spectacles of the 1980s, there was Ladybug Ladybug, a small, eerie drama inspired by real false alarms from the Cold War. The story follows school children and teachers in a rural community who receive word that a nuclear attack may be imminent. With no clear guidance and no confirmation, they walk home across empty fields, each step heavy with dread. The brilliance of the film is its simplicity. There are no bombs, no generals, no missiles on screen, just frightened kids, confused adults, and the paralyzing uncertainty of not knowing whether the world is about to end. That uncertainty proved more frightening than any mushroom cloud could. One haunting sequence follows a teacher escorting a group of children home, each slowly peeling away as they reach their houses. You feel the tension. Is this goodbye forever? By the time the film ends, the audience has been wrung out by the sheer psychological weight of waiting for a bomb that may, or may not, fall. Critics at the time praised its quiet power, though mainstream audiences largely overlooked it. Today it stands as one of the most underrated nuclear films, precisely because it focuses on the human element. Ladybug Ladybug isn't about war, it's about fear. And in some ways, that's worse. Dr. Strangelove, 1964. You can't talk about nuclear war on screen without talking about Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece. Dr. Strangelove is a comedy, yes, but it's the kind of comedy that makes you laugh 1 second and shiver the next. Released in 1964, at the height of Cold War paranoia, it turned absurdity into terror by showing how one unhinged general could trigger Armageddon. Peter Sellers plays 3 roles, including the unforgettable ex-Nazi scientist Strangelove, while George C. Scott and Sterling Hayden chew through dialogue that's both hilarious and horrifying. The war room sequences, "Gentlemen, you can't fight in here, this is the war room," have become iconic. But beneath the humor is a deadly serious point. Nuclear annihilation could happen not through malice, but through incompetence, paranoia, and human folly. Audiences at the time didn't know whether to laugh or scream. The film was both a box office success and a cultural lightning bolt, forcing people to confront the absurdity of nuclear deterrence. Critics hailed it as genius, and it remains one of the greatest satires ever made. What sets Dr. Strangelove apart is its ending, the doomsday machine triggered, mushroom clouds rising, all set to the sweet tune of "We'll Meet Again." It's funny, it's tragic, and it's unforgettable. Kubrick managed to prove that sometimes the only way to face the horror of the bomb was to laugh at the madness behind it. Nuclear war movies weren't just entertainment, they were warning shots, glimpses of how fragile our survival really is. Some terrified presidents, others tricked, entire cities, and a few left audiences wondering if the hope was even possible. But all of them proved one thing: the most dangerous enemy isn't just the bomb, it's our own choices. So, which of these shook you the hardest? Drop your thoughts below, subscribe for more deep dives, and let's keep the conversation alive.